What's my name?
I'd like to welcome each and every one of you to tonight's meeting. This is the second meeting of the year for the City Board of Directors. This is our business meeting, and we know the weather's not very nice out there, and so those of you who have come out and to brave the weather and to be with us, we certainly do appreciate that. We have about 4 action items under new business that we'll attend to, so the meeting should be relatively short. And I'd like you to all stand for the invocation by Melissa Glenn, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by our very own City Director, Larry Williams.
Lord God, we are so thankful for your faithfulness and for your wisdom. God, we thank you for those that you've brought to us, God, to serve our city. And we just ask, God, for their protection. We ask for the wisdom in every issue that comes before them, even tonight. We thank you that your hand of blessing is on our city, God, for protection, for unity, and prosperity to those who come and visit us and to those who live here. And we thank you for everything that you're doing. We look forward to what you're going to do in this new year. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Will you follow me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Glenn and Director Williams. We'll now call this meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Davidson.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Clark. Williams.
Here.
Garcia.
Here.
Foley.
Here.
McCabe.
Here. Now consider approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda, including any items under consent agenda that you'd like to have repositioned as a new business item? Director Williams.
I move for approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve. Seconded by Director Foley. Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. Consider approval of minutes of January 16th, 2018. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve as presented.
I so move, Mayor.
Motion by Director Jones, seconded by Director Foley. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Recognition of guests. Directors have any guests they'd like to recognize tonight? Moving on to the City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. So, for the 24th consecutive year, the City of Hot Springs has been awarded the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States. And for its 2016 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, known as our CAFR, I want to thank Doretha Yates and her crew at the Finance Department for this achievement. These things are more than just plaques that we put on the wall. They actually affect our bond rating and the financing that we get when we go out for public projects. So it's an important thing, and I want to thank all of them. The certificate is the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting. Also, we have applications for a volunteer opening for a position with an unexpired term on the Hot Springs Advertising and Promotion Commission. Those applications are being accepted until noon on Friday, February 6th. I'm sorry, not Friday, just noon on February 16th. The successful applicant will serve a term until September 30th, 2020. The opening is available to any person who is a qualified elector in the City of Hot Springs and an owner or manager of a hotel, motel, or restaurant business located within the city limits. For any information, you can call 321-2277 and ask for Laisa for more information. And then last week I spoke to the Oak Lawn Rotary Club regarding our 2017 highlights and also outlined some upcoming major projects and issues for the city in this coming year. I updated the club on the Majestic property redevelopment and estimated timeline for our P25 radio system project and capital improvement projects funded by water rate increases, also the Northwoods mountain biking trail construction and the board's consideration of a downtown parking authority. And then I'd like to invite everyone to bring your family to the Firefighter Training Grounds Open House and Ribbon Cutting, set for Sunday, March 4th from 1 to 3 p.m. At the event, Hot Springs Fire Department personnel will demonstrate the features of the new mobile fire training simulator. You'll be able to tour the other improvements on the training grounds. They're located at 617 Vernal Street off of Spring Street. You'll see for yourself why Hot Springs Fire is one of the most highly trained professional fire departments in the state. Then I have a save the date suggestion for the Cherry Blossom Festival. That's a benefit event on Saturday, March 10th, featuring Japanese wine and hors d'oeuvres, cultural demonstrations, a silent auction, and more. Proceeds from the event will help send exchange students for a study trip this summer to our sister city, Hanamaki, Japan. Sponsored by the Hot Springs National Park Sister City Foundation, the event will be held at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday, March 10th in St. Luke's Episcopal Church Community Room. For tickets, call 545-6960. And then Hot Springs Fire is looking for men and women who want to be part of a highly trained, diversified team. The services include dive team, swiftwater rescue team, search and rescue, regional hazardous materials team, aircraft rescue and firefighting, and tactical rescue. A recruitment seminar for the fire department will be held on March 15th, and applications will be accepted until March 21st. Call 321-6841 for details. I think the chief's right there. Cole's about the right age. He might be a good candidate. Just a little joke there. Also, I want to mention our police firing range has been located in a park in the Park Avenue Community Association for between 70 and 75 years, depending on who you talk to. I want to thank the neighborhood for being gracious and patient. I met with PACA about a little over a year ago. Director Davidson, and of course, has talked to me about this many times. So there's a couple of things that are going to happen. First of all, we're putting a building up there that is going to replace a metal shed that's there now that is kind of more or less falling down. And the department needs additional storage for records and evidence and property, and so we're going to make use of that building facility there for those purposes, but the firing at the range will discontinue effective immediately, and they're going to relocate temporarily to a range that's some distance out of town. I want to emphasize that our belief is that range out of town should be temporary, and that we're going to try to locate a piece of property closer to the city that would be suitable for development of a new range. We think that there may be some projects that we can save money on over the next 2 years to try to accomplish that. Also, the range that we have, that we've been using all that 70 years, I also want to mention 70 years ago we didn't have the number of officers we have. The weapons were different. There was no training regimen, no requirement, no state statute for qualification, and so the intensity of the range over the years has increased dramatically. And so something that might have made sense 70 years ago just doesn't work anymore for our department or for the neighborhood. So I want to thank them again, but I also want to emphasize to our department personnel that we are going to get a bigger, better, more suitable range where we can go and make all the noise we need to and hopefully not bother folks. And in fact, the chief and I have already talked to realtors, and we're determined to move fast on this and try to do something so that it doesn't drag on and on. And so the solution we have now is a temporary one for our training of our police officers with their weapons. And then Bill Burrow's going to give us a short update on the cemetery that he's worked on, I think, quite a while over the last 2 years. There's been a lot of interaction, so I wanted him to give you an update on that cemetery.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier and members of the board. Most of you have recalled or received maybe some phone calls regarding the city cemetery that's on Adams Street, also known as the Pest House Cemetery. We actually registered that particular cemetery as the city cemetery versus the Pest House, so it kind of does have a couple of different names depending on which records you're looking into. A little bit about the cemetery. The location, again, is on Adams Street. It's across from our Utility Field Operations Center. In 1895, the city of Hot Springs purchased acreage southwest of town for a cemetery and city hospital in response actually to an outbreak of smallpox. The hospital was primarily used for quarantine and palliative care since there was no cure for the disease. In subsequent years, the hospital cemetery was used for other pestilent disease outbreaks. As medical treatments advanced, the cemetery evolved into a potter's field. In the 1980s, we believe the last burial there was 1983, and there are a couple of headstones. One is of a Civil War veteran that's been damaged, and the grave has actually been exhumed, for lack of a better term. People were in there desecrating the graves, probably looking for souvenirs at some point. So in the 80s, when the city stopped using the grounds, a decision was made to let it return to nature in response to the vandalisms and other things that were happening in the site. However, in 2016, the city brought a herd of goats basically to clear the underbrush at the recommendation of an archaeologist that suggested the goats so we didn't damage any permanent marker that may be on the site. So we brought the goats in, and they were very effective in eliminating the vegetation. At that point, you couldn't see 50 feet within the property. I mean, it had a lot of undergrowth, a lot of overgrowth, and the goats were successful in at least letting us see where the boundaries were and bringing that down. We did that in 2016 and in 2017. The city began researching what measures should be taken to actually care for the site, to make sure that we had a site that could be opened up for anyone that wanted to view the historical aspects of the site, but yet not desecrate it. The city manager's office, as I mentioned, registered the cemetery with the Arkansas Department of Health. We consulted with the Arkansas Historic Preservation and the State Archaeologist's Office for help evaluating the site, and then received some recommendations for that preservation. Dr. Mary Beth Trubett, an archaeologist with the Arkansas Archaeological Survey there at Henderson State, visited the site a number of times, mapping the locations of objects that may be related to marking grave sites, as well as locations of obvious graves. When you look at that particular site, there is a small ditch that kind of runs in the center of it. You'll see two hills that kind of come down to one ditch line. Most of the graves are on the south side of that ditch line, and the hospital was up on the hill on the north side. So Dr. Trubett came in and spent many hours with many volunteers, really spurred on by a local citizen, Karen White, who's done a tremendous amount of research on the site. There are little bits and pieces of history and historical data on this particular site, really spread out in journals, newspapers across the state, and she was able to find a lot of that, did a lot of research in our own vault on burials that were there, so we really appreciate all the time and effort that she put in. But she also got other volunteers to help Ms. Trubett when they came in and did the mapping of the site, and we have a great report from Dr. Trubett regarding what their findings were. As I mentioned, the goats were brought back in 2017. City crews and volunteers followed up with chainsaws, pruning tools to remove dead trees and brush. We still have a little bit of work to remain, and what we found from Dr. Trubett's report was the north side of that ditch that I just mentioned. We were able to use machines, equipment, items to remove all of that particular downed trees. The south side, everything had to be cut and brought out by hand because we didn't want to damage some of the things that were left on the site. And really, you can't really see anything, but at that point in time, small shards of glass or plates or other things that people would leave to mark a grave may or may not have been on the site. So they mapped every one of those, and we didn't want to disturb them. So we still have a little bit of work to do on the south side as far as clearing that, but you can see in some of these pictures, it's an open site now. We had thought of fencing that area off. We've abandoned that. We think that we can keep it clear without that. And now that you're able to see the entire site, if we have any vandalism or people on the site that shouldn't be there, we can address that if they're doing some type of activity that they shouldn't. One of the things through Arkansas preservation, historical preservation, we are also working with them to receive a grant that will put up a wayfinding sign. As you know, part of the greenway now comes down Adams Street, and it's very close to the entrance or the roadway that goes into the north side of the site. So our intent is to place a wayfinding sign that will identify the site, explain what the site was, and any other historical information that we can place there. And Dr. Trubit and the Arkansas Historical Preservation have been very beneficial in helping us with that. Dr. Trubit came back over the last couple of weeks. She visited the site and again was very impressed at the amount of progress that was made. Her general recommendations for the care and preservation of the site was partially fill some of the deepest grave depressions with a different type of soil so we can identify and not lose where those are. Leaving a little bit of that depression so we can see that. Restore the 2 permanent grave markers that are currently there and get them in their proper position. And then it just protect the site from desecration. And that's what our intent is. Regardless of whom was buried in this particular cemetery, whether it was a Potter's Field or not, everyone there should have the opportunity to lay in peace with dignity and respect, and that's our goal, is to make sure that happens. I do want to make the board aware of one thing when it comes to this site. In 2016 and 17, we had expenses to bring the goats in, as well as a survey of the property. Since I've been with the city and well beyond before, this appeared to be utilities property. That whole site down there was kind of one large site. But as we've gone through this fact finding and getting records related to the site, this particular 10 acres and potentially 15, but at least 10 acres, this particular 10 where the cemetery is, that was purchased well before utilities purchased where they are now for the field. So the original funds were expensed through the utilities department as the owners of the property. As we've discovered that is not the case, we have reallocated or reappropriated those funds from utilities into the general fund where they belong. The cemetery does not have a utility purpose, nor did it then, so we wanted to make sure that our record keeping was correct. So those funds were reappropriated to the proper place, and the cemetery is now under the Public Works Department for perpetual maintenance as we move forward. So I know that each board member has received some calls over this over the past couple of years, so I wanted to give you a quick update of where we were and what our plans are in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Bill?
Thank you.
Any questions?
Good report.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Concludes our report, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Frazier. At this time, we'll entertain from individual directors announcements of upcoming events. Director Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to announce that next week on the 13th of February, the Arkansas Department of Transportation, which was formerly known as the Highway Department, has scheduled a public meeting at our transportation depot between 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. And they want your input. So they are particularly looking at the interchanges at 270 and Albert Pike and Airport Road, Higdon Ferry, Central Avenue, and Highway 7 south of 270. So please come and attend that meeting, your convenience, between 4 and 7 at the Transportation Depot, and have your input on this important topic. I hear from citizens every week about our streets and the need for improvement, and we do need more paving and improvement in our streets. And one of them I hear a lot about is on Central Avenue, which is Highway 7, which is a state highway, not a city-maintained street. They won't even let us at this point maintain it. So please bring your input because we want that as a priority for maintenance for the Department of Transportation. And secondly, on February 24th, there are money management courses being offered at the Financial Empowerment Workshop that will be between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. at Webb Center that's located at 127 Pleasant Street. There are 11 different programs offered in this workshops. And for more information, Denise Chambers can be contacted at 972-523-8625. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other directors with announcements of
I
upcoming?
just need to ask, will mail be sent out about the streets? Do you know, Director?
It was posted in the newspaper.
And that's it.
And I don't know if we're posting it on our website. Is it on our website?
I believe it has, public
Or it will
information.
be
Yeah.
in
Okay,
public
good.
information.
Thank you.
And I think there have been to civic leaders of some of our civic clubs, and I think they did send letters out to them and ask them to share.
Okay, good. Because everybody needs to know about
Everybody needs to know and come have their input, yes.
Any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. These items tend to be of routine nature and do not require discussion, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Got a motion by Director
Second.
Williams, seconded by Director Garcia. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. Now we'll consider resolution number R1817 and ask the city attorney to please read the resolution by title.
Resolution R 1817, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the City of Hot Springs, Arkansas, certifying local government endorsement of business to participate in the tax back program as authorized by Section 15-4-2706D of the Consolidated Incentive Act of 2003, Timber Automation, LLC. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Thank you. Motion to adopt by Director Foley, seconded by Director Garcia. Do we have some members of the audience that have signed up?
There's no sign-ups.
No
sir.
sign-ups. Very good. Then we have a staff member.
I think I'll cover this one for you, Mayor.
Yeah.
I see Mr. Troutman in the audience. I believe he briefed you at your agenda meeting, but I'll give you some additional information. Timber Automation, of course, this is a local company. I believe they've been in the Hot Springs area for a number of years, 25 to 30 years, gone under a couple different names. I believe they're High Tech Engineering, Baxley Log Pro, most recently Timber Automation. This is in addition to their 145,000 square foot facility there. The tax back program does have some requirements to it to do remittances of the sales and use taxes, at least $100,000 investment. Basically what Timber Automation is proposing, their entire price tag is $785,000 of capital improvements for machinery and other types of improvements. Also, there will be 44 additional jobs created through this. So the way the program is set up, the local government has to allow the sales and use tax to be remitted to bypass the sales and use tax, which Hot Springs has a 1.5% sales and use tax. So really what you're looking at here as a possible loss in sales tax revenue if everything was to be purchased here and delivered here to Hot Springs, you're looking at about $11,000 to $12,000 in total sales tax loss, which generally would be offset by increase in the jobs that this particular project would bring. So with that, the Timber Automation has requested the Board of Directors approval of their participation in this program.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Spitzer? Hearing none. Any discussion amongst the board? Hearing none. Please call the roll.
Jones,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Foley,
Aye.
Davidson,
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now we'll consider Resolution R 1818 and ask the city attorney to read by title only.
Resolution R 1818, a resolution authorizing an agreement with HCC Life Insurance Company for certain professional services, stop loss coverage insurance services. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt and no discussion, if any.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Jones, seconded by Director Foley. And Deputy City Manager Bill Burrows will give us a report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Staff is recommending the approval of the renewal with HCC Life Insurance Company for our stop-loss coverage for a period of 1 year from January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. Qual Choice, our third-party administrator, marketed 8 different stop-loss carriers for the City of Hot Springs 2018 renewal. Only 2 carriers gave quotes, and of the other six, 5 declined, and 1 did not meet the timeline. Aetna had been our stop-loss carrier for 2015 and 2016, and HCC was our stop-loss provider in 2017. HCC Life Insurance stop-loss carrier has been most favorable over that past year. Our maximum exposure in 2018 is right under $650,000 less than it was in 2017. We are recommending authorizing an agreement with HCC, and said agreement may be extended for additional terms with annual approval of the Board of Directors. I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any with that.
No questions? Thank you. Any citizens wish
No,
to talk?
sir.
Any discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Williams,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Foley,
Aye.
Davidson,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now we'll consider ordinance number 01805. I need to have a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
I'll make that motion.
Director Williams, Director
Second.
Foley is a second. Brian, please read by title only.
That motion, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ordinance 01805, an ordinance waiving the requirements of competitive bidding and declaring a sole source designation with SafetyCom for the purchase and installation of additional emergency warning sirens and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you now would entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
Motion to adopt.
I'll make that motion.
Director Williams, seconded by Director Garcia. Do we have a staff member?
Chatham, was it?
Safety com. Let's see.
Bill Burrows.
Thank you, Mayor. This is to add additional sirens through the SafetyCom network. SafetyCom is basically a sole source provider for our siren system. We still have, I believe it's 4 additional sirens that will be needed after these 2 are purchased to have this complete city coverage. These 2 is part of the program that we've had over the past few years where we tried to add 2 a year until we have the entire city covered. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have on that. It's become almost a routine purchase that we've had to get the city covered with the siren system.
Any questions of Mr. Burrows? Thank you. Any audience members, citizens signed
No,
up?
sir.
No? Discussion amongst the board? Thank you. Please call the roll.
Garcia,
Aye.
Foley,
Aye.
Davidson,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Our final action item of the night is to consider ordinance number 01806. I'd entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read by title only.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Director Williams, seconded by Director Garcia. All in favor of the motion to suspend the rules, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Approved. Mr. City Attorney.
Ordinance 01806, an ordinance vacating a portion of a certain unnamed and undeveloped street right-of-way located along Lakeshore Drive and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion.
Thank you. Motion to adopt?
So moved.
Director Jones, seconded by
Second.
Director Davidson. And
I'll handle this one, Mayor.
Mr. Spitzer, City Clerk.
Thank you, sir. This item comes to the board. I believe you had your public hearing back in December of 2017, one of your last meetings of 2017. What this is an ordinance to vacate a portion of unused, unnamed right-of-way. It's located off of Lakeshore Drive. It's approximately 50 feet wide by about 450 feet long. It ends there at the shore of Lake Hamilton. The petitioners are the Eubanks family and the Mueller family. They requested that this particular portion be vacated. They do have some designs on the property to increase the marketability of this property. So the way that a alley street vacation works is half of the property goes to the adjoining property owners, and both property owners filed the petition with the city clerk's office and made that application to do so. Notice was published in the paper prior to the public hearing, and that sets the stage for this evening to go ahead and staff would recommend that the board approve this vacation of this area because there's really no public use for it. We've checked with our internal departments, the utilities and others, and also the external, so CenterPoint and Entergy and others, and none had any objections to this vacation.
Very good, thank you. Any members of any citizens sign up?
No, sir.
No? Thank you. Any discussion amongst the board? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Foley,
Aye.
Davidson,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Brings us down to Board of Director comments. Director Davidson.
About the firing range, I'll just share a personal story. Probably the first week I was in my house, in the middle of the night, I hear a gunshot. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm back in East Texas or Dallas again. But then it kept firing, and I got it up to 17 rounds. And I thought, okay, is this a gang war? What is this? And, they had the same amount, just repetitive. So I called around in the city the next morning. They said, oh, that's the firing range. I said, what firing range? And had a long conversation with Mr. Frazier this weekend. He said, so your realtor didn't let you know that there was one within hearing distance. And so I thought, that's at our Park Avenue Community Association meetings. I think I first brought it up at one of the first meetings I attended. So that's the move so we don't have to hear gunshots anymore, and hopefully none at all. But it at least the firing did stop at night, which helped a whole lot. Now you hear it occasionally, if I'm outside. But I appreciate the effort to move it away from a residential area. Thank you.
Very good. Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of thank yous and kudos, but for some of the staff. But first, I would like to ask Deputy City Manager Bill Burrow if he could give us a brief update on a project I'm very interested in, the H2O program we talked about, that's to help water utility customers that may have be struggling to pay water bills.
Certainly, Director Garcia. We looked at the other communities that had a similar program, and were able to find 2 or 3 in Arkansas. The one that we found that seemed to have the most applicability to the city of Hot Springs is the H2O program that you just mentioned. In reviewing how that system worked, looking at our third-party provider for the billing system, how we actually populate our bills through our meter reading system, we were able to work through that, and we've come to a place to where we can solve or resolve all of the issues we were having. We're able to potentially put in the H2O process. The only piece that we're actually missing is that third-party administrator, the nonprofit agency that would actually administer the program itself. From a technological standpoint, we've worked through those and we've got the system ready to go on our end and with our third-party provider for the billing. We just need to solidify the relationship with that with the nonprofit agency that could administer the program itself. We have a meeting coming up in the next week or so that hopefully we'll be able to solidify that. We've reached out to almost every nonprofit within the city to see if they had interest in potentially operating a system like the H2O program or a program such as this. Some had much interest but did not have the staff or the ability to administer it. We are working with one agency that we believe will do a very good job. So hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have that solidified and be bringing you back something with that goal of trying to have that implemented by the first quarter. If it won't be the first quarter, it'll be soon after. There'll still be some things that we'll need to work out, bring that agreement back to the board. So just from a timing standpoint, it'll be very close.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the work you've done and all of those involved in working through all these details. It's very much appreciated.
Yes, ma'am. It'll be a great program once we get it up. Thank you.
Thank you. And the other thank yous I wanted to shout out to all of those that came and participated in a neighborhood meeting last week with the Beverly Hills subdivision, and this is there off of Files Road, and Nancy Baker organized with all the neighbors there. And we had great representation and presentations that interacted with all of the citizens there. And I'd like to thank our Deputy City Manager, Bill Burrow, our Assistant City Manager, Lance Spicer, and all of the departments that were represented from our utilities, our neighborhood services, our water department, sanitation, the police department with Monty Ledbetter, Randy Atkinson, Mike Scott, and Patty, our police detective, and Officer Joey Williams, who also stayed for a second meeting on organizing a neighborhood watch. So they demonstrated excellent customer service. I cannot emphasize enough how much these people care about our residents. And they were there side by side with all of these neighbors, listening to their issues, taking notes, coming back with their departments and working on solving the issues. And several have already been resolved or in process. And so I thank all of you that took the time to come and meet with these citizens. And I have had excellent feedback of how much each of these residents appreciated you. I'd also like to another special thanks to sanitation. We had some couple of incidents of illegal dumping in District 5 last week and yesterday, and they reacted promptly with their cleanup crews that came out and took care of the issues. But please do not litter. It trashes our city. We care about our city, and our sanitation department does a great job. Thank you.
Director Williams, you look like you're ready to say something.
As a fan of SEC basketball, if no other members of the board have anything to say, I move for adjournment.
I'll second that for you.
Well, we need to debate that.
Oh, goodness.
All right. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Who wants to stay here in the dark? All right. We are adjourned. Drive safely on your way home.
Yes.